I am Amy Griffin. I'm the public program, exhibitions and public programs coordinator or marketing manager. I have a new title, Amy Griffin, exhibitions and marketing manager at Opalka Gallery. And we have been curating shows at the Art at APL program for, this is our third or fourth show. We've been doing it for a few years. And we're so pleased tonight to be talking with 3 artists from the current exhibition. I'm going to share my screen because I have a few images. And I put a note in the waiting room, but I just wanted to remind everyone I am recording. We'll be putting this on the YouTube channel for Opalka Gallery. So the exhibition at the library right now is called Piece Together. There's 11 artists, and I have a few little images just to kind of give a sense of the, of the show. There we go. I'm at the very back. I'm at the very end. I have to go through the other end. Sorry. I'm also letting people in from the waiting room as we talk. So here we go. So Piece Together, it's at the Pine Hills branch on Western Avenue in Albany. And we've got just a quick little overview. There's the title wall you can see on the left. It's got work by Chloe Harrison on the title wall. On the right-hand side, you can see one from Paula Drysdale Frazell, who's one of our guests tonight, Fern Apfel and Henry Klimowitz here in the background. Beth Humphrey, who's one of our guests tonight, and Juan Hinojosa on the right-hand side, another guest tonight. Beth's are in the stairwell. You can kind of see that there. We have Nikki Haynes and another Paula Drysdale Frazell image there, and Ken Ragsdale, who also has a piece in the stairwell, a big installation that's been there for a year and a half. And we kind of built shows starting from some idea that was inspired by Ken's work. So the last show before Piece Together was called Rear View, and it was about sort of memoir and personal history, which his work is also deals with. Here on the left-hand side, you can see Danny Goodwin, and here is Mindy McDaniel, and Michael Oatman on the left, and Ken Ragsdale on the right. And I think we included everybody in that little slideshow. But tonight we're happy to have, as I mentioned, Juan, Beth, and Paula. And I'm just going to read a little bio for each one, and then I'm going to let them each talk about their work and sort of introduce their work. And then we'll open up, after a discussion, we'll open up to questions. So let's see. So Beth, I'm sorry, I lost my document with my bios. Beth Humphrey lives in the Catskills, and she starts with brown paper bags and builds up the surfaces with paint, drawing, found materials, light, intuition, and shadows. She's exhibited widely, including solo shows in Woodstock, New York, and Kingston, New York. And I'm going to post all the artists' websites in the chat for everyone to visit at their leisure. But we'll open it up to Beth. I'm going to just kind of click through some of these images. They're all in the current show, I believe. There might be one or two that's disoriented. But you just let us know.
Okay, I will. Well, Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I feel very honored to be speaking to all you guys with Juan and Paula. So yeah, the work that's in this show is kind of from a kind of longer series. I work a lot with ideas in the landscape and my relationship to the landscape and thinking about human impact on the environment. So a lot of these pieces that are in this show are kind of like characters, so this, for example, this piece is called Cloud, and it's really kind of a landscape. I try to create like a focal point or a character in there. So there's like this sort of like mountain pile shape. The work in general is created about 6 or 7 years ago. I really started moving away from traditional art materials. I was exploring using different kinds of substrates, and I kind of fell in love with brown paper bags. I was using them as a masking tool to do other things, and I ended up really liking how the surface was reacting. It creates a really matte surface, and I also really like that most brown paper bags are recycled many times. They're kind of something that's might have been recycled 10 or 20 times in their lifespan. That history of use was kind of interesting to me. And also that it wasn't a precious material. It was not exactly found, but it was abundant and very simple material. And it just ended up kind of elevating the colors I was using. So I'm moving away from this, but in a lot of the works at the library, I was creating stencils, building up surfaces with spray paint, and then going over them and building these shapes. My studio, I won't share a picture of my studio because it's a sea of little scraps of paper everywhere. A lot of it is creating a lot of larger pieces that then get whittled down and interchanged. There's a lot of processes. There's a lot of moving things around and seeing what fits and then landing on things. Like I said in my bio, I really do enjoy and invite accident and surprise into my process. Yeah. And another thing that I'm really interested in, especially with these pieces, I started getting into using acrylic film to create different kinds of shadows in the background and pom-poms and string, trying to play a little bit with what happens when you take the pieces and you hang them away from the wall to get shadow. And then when you move around the piece, you get a different dimension. It kind of reacts according to where you're standing next to it. This piece is called Boat, and it I started referencing more water in my work and rainbows. I play with a lot of bright colors, and I might invite things like rainbows into my work, but it's definitely inspired more through some darker impulses and more concern about the environment than playfulness in general. And that's these last two pieces, on the right side of this piece, that's blue acrylic film. So that usually casts a really blue shadow, like an aura around it. This was another kind of, I was referencing pressure in the environment and like strata of ground and buildup and then water. Another in that series. The using of the film, I've kind of moved away from that recently. Again, I am really thinking about the materials I use. As much as I love using these acrylic films, I'm really trying not to use plastic. I'm trying to move away from that. I'm exploring. I don't know what's going to be happening in my work in the future. I'm really trying to think about how I use color, try to get some bright colors, but maybe moving away from less plastic, less destructive materials.
And so this was one I wondered if I had the orientation right, because it has a similar name to the previous one, but it's a different orientation. Just curious what the decision making on that is.
Well, it's funny because these have been in a couple of different shows, and a couple of times they've been rotated. I'm not, I'll make them with a certain intent. And then sometimes when they're all like the way they're hung at the library, because they're all hung together, I like them to respond to what the overall display is. In general, I think the orientation is correct on those.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're good. But I have moved things around. I do occasionally drive people crazy by completely flipping the orientation. For this one, I was definitely thinking about pressure. I was thinking about fracking. I was thinking about kind of environmental pressure that we put when we are reacting with our surroundings. And another one, this one was the piece that I believe it's called Mutual Aid, and it was in reaction to, it's a concept I really think about a lot in terms of how we deal with our communities in terms of reaching out and trying to create mutual aid as opposed to kind of this top-down help and design of our communities. But it also references sort of leaves and natural worlds. Yeah, you can go to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I really like to see what happens when you create these. You do this one had a lot of drawing in it. I was doing a lot of drawings, these kind of scripty kinds of shapes, cutting them out, and then seeing what happens when I put them. Again, it would have been two separate piles going on, and seeing what happens when you bring them together. But I really liked using that line. I liked exploring a little bit more drawing with this piece. Again, the pom-poms, I am like a major sucker for pom-poms and notions. Like whenever I go to a yard sale, I used to do a lot. I used to include fiber and textiles in my work. And now it's really boiled down to these really tiny elements. That's just a piece of thread and the smallest possible pom-poms you can find. Again, it's another element of bringing that line, that drawing idea into this piece. And that's a feed bag in the top. We used to have chickens, and oh no, it's not a feed bag. It's actually the straw I used to put in my chicken coop. And I saved that piece of paper for like 3 years till I found the right place to put it.
Oops. Well, I guess that's the last one of yours I have.
Right.
Do you think that's everything that's in the show? I'm trying to remember.
I think so. I think it was. Yeah.
I want to go back to sorry for the quick. There's the image that shows Beth's pieces in the space, framed up in the stairwell. And
that's a slightly unusual presentation for me. They're usually not framed, but I like to show, like I've shown at the airport and different public places, which I love. I really like to show my work in places that are, lots of people get access to them. And so I don't normally frame them unless they're in spaces like that, which it does completely change the work.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love that kind of container thing that happens when you put things in a frame.
Sure. Yeah. We hung them in a very kind of tight organization also, rather than spreading them throughout the gallery. Like some of the work is spread out, like Juan has these two pieces near each other here on the right, and then other pieces in other places. But with these, they felt like such a little family. Mm-hmm. Somehow they felt like they needed to kind of stay together.
Oh, I agree. I love that presentation. I love them kind of clustered together. It is, I like to show the work that way. It also, because these are done, that body of work's probably about 1.5 years worth of work, and to ideas come and go, and then to see them have this relationship to each other. It's almost a little bit like a bunch of specimens too, the way that they're kind of clustered together, which is another aesthetic I love.
Yeah, I do too. So I think maybe we'll save, thank you for putting, Alyssa and Lynn put a question in the chat, but and as questions come up, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll kind of do them all toward the end, or not toward the end, but after each artist gets to be introduced and show their work, if that works okay with everybody. All right, so now we're on to Juan. And Juan, who lives in New York City, constructs collage drawings from found objects, challenging greed, obsessive consumption, and the social stratification of American culture. He recently had solo exhibitions at Union College's Mandeville Gallery and at Materials for the Arts and Allegra La Viola Gallery, both in New York City, and just finished up a residency at Mass MoCA, right?
Yes, all true. Thank you. Thank you, Amy, for that.
Sure.
I actually love the library exhibition. Like as a whole, it's like such a great, strong show. But this work here isn't in the show.
Oh.
I
well, I would say I started with Beth and there was like 9. And I was like, okay, I'll try to get like around that same number. So I did fill in with both you and Paula with a couple of things that aren't in the show.
Okay.
Just to...
It's cool. I kind of forget like what's where sometimes, so forgive me too. One of those months. So I'll just start off with like I collect found objects wherever I go. So I'm like a massive hoarder. My studio is a disaster, but it's required. So in most works, you'll find a photograph, a paper clip, torn off paper, postcards, posters, fabric, actual clothing sometimes. In this one, there's an iron-on patch, 3 white paper clips from the 80s, a mini Polaroid photograph, and I believe ink and pieces of a yogurt lid. If you can find the yogurt lid pieces, I'll give you $20. As the works like go larger, like the scale helps like add like bigger objects in there. And this one was referring to a previous boss I had at MTV who thought purple was like the color of royalty. She was a pain in the ass. but she made for great hangover stories. So yeah. In this one, there's like a bunch of Scott paper towel labels in here, an old Metro card, a flight ticket from, I think, from EasyJet on the upper left-hand corner. But yeah, it's kind of like just me collecting souvenirs as I go through life. I get to travel a lot because I'm obsessed with like deals, and I'm single, so I can do whatever I want. So whenever I go somewhere, I have like a tote bag that's empty with me, and a pocket or in a school bag that's also empty. I'll just pick up things off the street, and like New York is so filthy, it's amazing. But like when you get to like Paris, pretty dirty too. You get to Germany, and it's like super clean, and it ruins the whole process. Lucky for me, humans are pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this little piece. So this one, so in the studio, I tend to rework all the found objects, and I organize them all by color. And I guess it's helpful in my head, maybe the other artists as well, to like work with a single color and like focus on how strong a color can be. And red is it's the most used color in advertisements and in general. So I pulled all the red I had in the studio, which included a crushed soda can, a flower pendant, don't know how or where I got that one. Playing cards are literally all over the city. Look down when you walk around, they're on the floor. I don't know why. People like drop them around. It's weird, but I have like almost a full deck. So there is a wristband along the edge of the wooden panel that kind of like goes around it a little bit. It's pretty nice.
Back here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I like to give like the viewer the chance to see the work and then like come back to it later and then like, oh wow, that's been there the whole time. I didn't see it, you know? Little surprise. This guy, family. This one's a rough one. Yeah, there's a lot of like there's like a lottery ticket in there, sneaker references for sneaker culture in New York City, which is also pretty a big deal. A flattened soda can this time. More Metro card, just a bunch of like found trash. And there's such a beauty in giving trash a second life. That way that it can become something more than just, you know, landfill stuff. It becomes art. It can become anything. I upcycle all the time. Even in my home, I upcycle. I love recycling as well. Oh yes. So this one I made at Materials for the Arts. Materials for the Arts, MFTA, they offer a program to I think 2 artists a year. And I walked in like really full of myself. And I was like, I'm gonna grab all the paper, I'm gonna take everything I can. And then I discovered fabric, I discovered 3D objects, I discovered like a bunch of things. So I got really screwed. I was like, fuck. Oh, sorry. I started to pull like these really ugly, tacky fabrics I would never use or want in general, but pairing them with like a huge yellow circle, I calmed both things down a little bit. And then things were clicking really fast at that program. For some reason, somebody gave them dinosaurs. So I took 2, because, you know, why the hell not? And those white and red boxes on top, like a little crown, are light bulbs, and light bulbs are in the boxes still.
Wow.
So, there's that.
And are there little people like Power Man or whatever they're called?
Like
Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Hello Kitty on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
There's like I think 2 gnomes, small gnomes on either corner, and then I believe there's a trophy in the middle, because as a kid I never won any trophies. And then there's like the Bionic Woman. All you guys know who she is? She was a big deal.
The Bionic Woman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's in the middle, right above the blue lips. There's a little picture of her. And as a kid, I watched the reruns and I was like, so amazed. I don't know where or when I got her picture, but I've kept it for a long time. Like everything.
This was one that you had sent early on, and that last one, I really was trying to figure out how to put in the show. And this one, it wasn't, I don't think we ever considered putting it in the show just because it wasn't the paper, you know, cut paper or anything related to cut paper, but I just wanted to include it so you could talk about it.
Yeah. So during COVID, I realized that I am lonely and I live alone. I need to get a pet or something, or a partner. Here comes first. So I started making these cats out of like found objects and plastics and stuff. And I guess it was just an innate go-to thing to just like start putting gems and making it into like this like really bizarre religious act. So I literally gave this cat like a crown, which seems crazy, but I guess when you're lonely during a pandemic and you make, you know, 8 to 10 cats pretty fast, you kind of go with it. So this one I hand painted. I pulled on my old paint collection, hand painted it blue, and I attached with glue or with pins or with a screw sometimes every single jewelry flower that I can find. And I guess I've collected a bunch of broken jewelry over the years. People break stuff in the city all the time. So the entire surrounding of the cat, the circumference, is covered in gems. it is quite stunning. It's also like really delicate because like the crown wants to fall down. I hate that part, but like I love her. She's the best.
So
Oh,
how big is
and the
this?
title to she is 24 inches tall.
Oh.
Like I think like 18 wide. Maybe a little taller. I forget now. It's on my website.
Kind of like life
but
size.
Oh yeah, you can hug it. Oh yeah, I was that lonely, Amy. But all the cat titles are references to 80s songs, so feel free to like dive into that when you're bored. I love music.
I just remembered I was going to put your website in the chat for everyone.
It's very homemade.
I think that's the last of the, let me see, last of your images. But before we move on, I'll just go back to the installation shot just to kind of get some scale again. So I guess it doesn't help that shot doesn't give you that much of an idea of the scale, but these are rather big. You can kind of see the windowsill back here. Do you remember what the dimensions on these are?
I believe those are like 48 high and like 32 wide each.
Yeah, they're pretty large, and we put them together like a little, again, kind of in conversation with each other. I don't know if you normally show them together because they're not a diptych, they're individual pieces, but
they do feel like they're friends. And in my studio I make work in pairs. I think this goes back to being lonely. So everything has a friend.
Okay.
Even came in pairs. It was hilarious.
The what came in pairs?
The cats, even those came in pairs.
Oh, okay.
These two were made at the same time.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. The silvery paper. I know you had some on gold paper too. I was noticing that aren't in the show. But the other thing is like this, I think is this a friend of this one? That's why I got them. I think I was thinking they were both in the show because they kind of look related. They look like they're in the same family.
I would say they're definitely the same family. They're cousins. Yeah, and they're cool.
Yeah. That little one is across from circulation, just for anyone going into the Pine Hills Library. So Paula, I'll just show there's that one, like I mentioned before, this one over here on the left, you can kind of see for scale's sake. And the other one is at the, oh yeah, this little one here. So there's a couple different sizes. But we'll move on to Paul. Thank you, Juan. There we go. So Paula Drysdale Frazell lives in Albany. She's inspired by the work of Romare Bearden. Her work has been shown most recently as part of the Women's Show at Art Associates Gallery in Albany, which just closed. The show just closed, not the gallery.
Yeah.
And that's out on Railroad Avenue. I haven't been there yet, actually. I missed that show. It was called the Women's Show, right?
Yeah, it's a really nice space. Yeah, very nice. And the owners are very art oriented and love art. You can tell.
That's great. And then also your work is part of the set design of The Light, a production of the Black Theater Troupe of Upstate New York. And she has a studio in the Albany Barn.
I live in the Albany Barn.
You live and work in the Albany Barn.
Yes.
And so I'm going to just put that URL in the chat.
Thank you for having me. I have to confess that I don't often talk about my art, so you may have to bear with me a little bit. I think that overall, honestly, I would have to say what motivates me is really from my childhood. Growing up in the 50s and 60s as a minority, I think really influenced me, and also fostered a very intense family relationships. And we were very close and tight. And I had a lot of love poured over me. And I try to bring that to my work. As a result, also, I tend to do a lot of women, a lot of Black women, Black babies. That's just something that I find to be reassuring and beautiful. The other things I really like in this piece, I call it Road Weary. It's just I use a lot of maps, and I think they represent a lot of different things to me. And some of what they represent is just the time and weariness that life can bring to you sometimes, just, running all around and all the weights we have to bear and all the roads we have to go down. Those kind of things are part of what maps represent to me. I've also used them as, a last piece I did, I had in a little baby rattle, and that was kind of like, the road's wide open and hope springs eternal kind of thing. I do a lot of babies, but I love maps. Her face is street maps, I think, that I found from London. The rest of her body is USA maps. I use a lot of hand-painted papers, and I also use a lot of fabrics. And apparently, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, I have a thing for birds, and I guess I've been gluing them, pasting them on images for decades. I don't know why, but I just love them.
And sometimes you use fabric.
Yes, I use a lot of fabric in my work too. That's kind of fun. I go fabric shopping. Sometimes I have an idea that I want to do, and I'll, look for specific fabrics that I think speak to that. Sometimes it's just, I just grab a fabric that I think is beautiful. It just depends, but I do utilize a lot of fabrics. I go back and forth. I like to combine. I think for collage, for me, is I like a giant puzzle, like a problem to be solved. And I like using different elements and sort of forcing them to get along and all work together in a pleasing fashion to make something new that speaks to me. Again, that's just paper, hand-painted paper. I use acrylic paints. I have a thing for nature too. I think I try to work from beauty, even if I'm doing something that, is about something that's really ugly. I still want it to have a certain a beauty to it, that's how I see life, I guess. But and then this piece is a little different because I don't normally use print with words in it and things, but sometimes I do that, and I go back, like I said, I go back and forth. This piece was fun. I started doing birdhouses to get into the build show. I went to a show once with a friend, and it was all architectural and or related that way. And I thought, oh, I want to be part of this show, and what can I do to do something that might work in this show? And I decided to do birdhouses, urban birdhouses, I call them. I've done quite a few since then. And I like to, in different settings. This one, I've also done some that I did one that I call Arbor Hill, urban birdhouses, Arbor Hill. I've done urban birdhouses, Pine Hills. So, I just like to do different sections of town in a version of this. Mm-hmm. And they're fun, This I call Mommy and Me. Again, this is from an old photograph that's of my mother and me. And I don't know, it's a combination of paint, fabric, some hand-painted papers, just one of the many tributes I've paid. This is my mother. It's called Joyce. and it's from fabric. And the blouse I really liked because from a distance it looks like sort of like pop art, but in reality it's close-up black and white old photographs of her. And it's acrylic paint. This particular piece has been published and won a lot of awards. It's something that I'm very proud of.
And I remember this one was already in a private collection, I think.
Yeah, this has been sold. It's been published in a book too, which is I actually just entered a competition online many moons ago. This is an old piece. It's probably 10 years old.
Mm.
And they just picked it to publish. So it was very exciting.
So would you say that your studio is messy?
Oh, I'm very messy, very, very, very messy. Yes.
You have like a pile of fabric and like fabric
Yes.
scraps and things
I
like
try
that.
to keep it sort of organized. I mean, when I'm actually working, it is very messy, but I try to keep things organized and try to keep my fingers doing something, even if I'm not working on a particular piece. For instance, I might spend a day just hand painting papers so that, you know, all different colors, although I tend to lean towards certain colors, I guess, when I go back and look at it. But so I'll just hand paint a whole bunch of colors so that they're ready for when when I start to work. I'll go out, like I said, and go fabric shopping and just look for things that one are either interest me or, oh, I know I'm going to do this and that. And I want to have I want to have this color palette. So I'm going to buy these types of fabrics. I've also gotten into lately, although I don't think there's anything in the show that represents it, I'm not sure. I also like to paint fabrics. So I'll buy the fabrics and then I'll go in and paint on top of them too. Just it creates another dimension and brings more life to something, and you can't, I guess all artists feel this, you just can't stop doing stuff to things, so that sometimes becomes a problem. But I do like to doctor everything, that I put into my pieces.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I want to open up the questions. I know we have a couple already. So thank each one of you for kind of talking about your work so nicely. Let's go back. So Alyssa and Lynn, do you want to ask your question on camera or do you just want me to read it? I'm happy if you want to turn on your mic and ask it.
You can ask it, Amy.
Okay. They ask, what makes the colors? This is for Beth. And could you talk about how you're interested in the shapes? We see toes.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's funny.
So in general, in the past, I will spend like a couple of months in the summer making stencils and doing spray painted. I'll cut up a bunch of bags and layer a lot of color with stencil and spray paint, but I've been moving a little bit away from that. A lot of the work here is gouache and Caran d'Ache crayons. I use that for a lot of the drawing elements. And then for example, with this one, there's Caran d'Ache crayons on the top, gouache, blue background, and then a white gouache to make the lines. And then the film, the acetate film that I use. I have done a little experimenting with like soaking the paper in inks, like colored inks. But like I said, I moved some of the acrylic paints, moved to gouache and into maybe thinking about tempera a little bit, just something that's a little less plasticky in my life. But most of the work that's been shown here is spray paint, gouache, and the Caran d'Ache crayons. And shapes. Toes. It's so funny that you said toes. I've never seen toes in the work before. And now like I'm seeing foot. Like that is 100% foot like now.
I think that orientation especially.
They're,
now
they're
I
very,
see it there too.
you see,
Yeah.
it's toes. It's all toes. Like that's
in a
it.
flip-flop, in a flip-flop.
It's really I think a lot about like, or shapes that I'm looking. I live in the mountains. I think a lot about rocks, quarries. My road is a quarry. So I'm always looking at how these little bumps are coming out from underneath and through the course of time make their shapes apparent to me. So that's really where a lot of the shapes, or like a landscape reference, not toes.
Would you ever consider, rather than like creating being someone who's buying plastic, you don't want to use plastic, do you not want to use it at all? Or would you consider, like Juan uses like a bright red plastic garbage that he finds that's already been discarded?
Yeah, no, I would definitely consider that. I mean, if it was, it's funny because I'm kind of at this point a connoisseur of paper bags. Like I have my preferences, and I get very upset when Hannaford changed their one kind of bags into other kind of bags. But I would consider bringing color in that way for chalky matte surface that comes with the paper bags. But if I could find that equivalent in found color objects, I would definitely do that. It's just it's not something I've been doing lately, although I love it. I mean, I love how Juan puts those. I mean, it's that small little piece with the can and the armband and everything. I mean, just I love that. It's just not something that I've been doing lately, but I would consider.
Sue Black has a question for Juan, which was, what do you use to adhere all your papers and yogurt lids and stuff to each other and then to the background piece?
So it depends. The wood panel is great because it's a hard surface and it's thick. Depending on the paper or the plastic or the object, different glues are required. I become like a glue expert. I don't know, it's weird, but literally all kinds. Jade is my favorite glue to use. At times I'll just skip the glue and use a drill and screw into the wood. And once you do that, that ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I even like found like Elmer's at times, an old classic. It's good for a reason. I do avoid the hot glue gun because that's just going like off and at random. Yeah, kind of depends, but the website thistothat.com has all the glue info you can ever need.
This to that. Oh, that's great.
Checking that out.
Glad to help.
Let's see. Oh, Lynn and Alyssa, Juan and Paula, how do you start the collage?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
Sure.
For me, in general, I mull over things in my head for a long time. So I have an idea, I have a feel about what I'm trying to do, and then I always sketch it out because I find for me, I have to have a really good composition in my pieces or I get lost. Now, that doesn't mean that that I'm going to follow that, all the way from beginning to end, but it just gives me a sense of where I'm going. And then if things change, I adapt and I'll change with them. But I like to have sort of a roadmap, as it were, to get started. So I sketch. Sometimes I work things even more than sketching. I'll, put fabrics down and paper down. I do that a little bit to get the feel that I'm in the right direction. I don't like to do it too much because I've learned that if I put too much energy into my sketching and push it too far, then when I go to do it again, it's kind of lost its freshness almost. But I do work out. I have an idea of what I'm doing and some sort of a roadmap before I start.
Wow. I wish I was more like you, Paula. That's amazing. I try sketching, I just can't, like, for me, I guess. I don't know. So I will get a surface, whether that's like a wood panel or a piece of paper or that chrome paper you saw earlier. I'll pull out like a single, so my colors are all in drawers. So all like the reds are together and the oranges are together. So I'll pull out a color or an item from that container, and then that will spark a need for an alternate color, a matching color, or a different texture of the same color. And then it all kind of like just happens sporadically, but I don't attach anything down until the next day. Because when I have things placed on a panel or paper, I think it looks amazing. But then I'll go home, wake up the next morning and be like, oh, that was a mistake. I'll go back to the studio and then I'll rearrange some things and then I will start the gluing process. But I do like to wait and let my mind like have that one extra like night's sleep to like realize what I was doing, what I want to do. And the gluing process can take like the longest time sometimes. But yeah, it's very instinctual and it's very reactive to the items or to the shape of what I have.
Thanks to you both. Cora asks, Beth, you mentioned using sustainable mediums in your work. Have you ever experimented with making natural pigments from plants like beets or other vegetables?
I have done some. I actually, one of my day jobs is I'm an education director for a small museum in Woodstock. And last fall, I did a big project with a school district where we made acorn ink with a great teacher and artist named Roberta Ziemba, who is very excited to be making inks. And that really sparked something. I mean, I'd played around with it a bit. One of the problems I was having is that the brown paper bags really just absorb and suck out, like they mute a lot of colors. So I haven't moved towards a substrate that would maybe celebrate these natural colors a little bit more. But I definitely have the bug now. It's like intense. I've been reading a lot about it and I'm really excited for this summer to really explore and be able to experiment with some different natural dyes and materials.
It would be really cool if you could figure out some way to take stuff that you could like reuse to make your own substrate.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for sure. It's funny, you get into a little bit of a rut. Like I every few years I have to really kick myself and give myself permission to kind of move into a different medium or bring something new into the studio. I'm kind of emerging into a new, like ready for that now. And I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned like accidents and surprises in your work. So maybe one day you'll come up with a happy accident.
Yeah, exactly.
Something really cool.
I hope so. Thank you.
I think we all probably have happy accidents, yeah. Right? I mean, I have certainly had my share.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yes.
Well, I definitely think that's an element in collage for sure, because you're allowing these pairings and the surprises. And Juan, what you were saying about like getting excited about putting things together, but then walking away and seeing how it plays nicely overnight and, all those kinds of that time element.
Yeah.
And Paula, with like the maps and like, I would imagine that has some like travel, like that's going to impact if you go places too and change and bring you into new directions in that accident.
Thank you.
Sue has another question. She says, thank you, Juan and Paula. And and Paula, how do you adhere your fabric down to the substrate? And also Beth, and with your paper bags. Oh, for Beth, with your paper bags, do certain glues cause them to wrinkle more?
For me,
Well,
I use gel medium. I use a gel medium as a glue, and I also use it as a sort of isolation barrier that I put on top of my pieces when they're done, before I varnish them, which I also do most of the time, not always, but gel medium works perfect for me. I've had no problems with it. And I do work on panels mostly because they don't have give, but you know, I have worked a lot on canvas too. And I do use it on canvas as well. But right now I work mostly with wooden panels, cradled panels for the most part.
The glue I'm using pretty exclusively now is tacky glue. Like it's a craft glue. It's good for fabric. It's good, and it's dry enough that it doesn't really wrinkle the brown paper bag. I used to use Yes glue. I don't know. I'm not good at using that glue. It's so pasty and I get frustrated. It doesn't move the way I need it to move, but that is really, like, if I'm using a thinner paper, I would maybe gravitate back towards Yes glue. But tacky glue is really strong, dries quickly, and it hasn't been wrinkling my work.
There's so much glue talk. I'm really excited. I can't wait to look at this to that. Is that what it's called?
I know, I'm very excited.
Yeah, I know, it's interesting.
Oh, Sue's already gone there. Says it's terrific. Thanks, Juan. I had a question about just, does anybody have problems with archival, like making your work archival, or like, are these kinds of things, especially like, you know, the garbage stuff, I guess, will never go away. It's probably the most archival stuff, right? If it's made of plastic, it's never leaving. But
Yeah.
is that a consideration in terms of like how the work holds up, and all the various kinds of materials, or like the brown paper bags? Is it a fragile material?
Well, I know that brown paper bags are just full of acid, you know, like they're just, you know, but that was one of the moments where I gave myself permission. I was like, I'm not worrying about this. I'm not, like, I cannot sit here and think, well, I wonder if this is going to last 100 years. I mean, it's just not a consideration. And it hasn't been a problem. I mean, the oldest work I've had somewhere like 8 years, and it's been fine. You know, it holds up really well. And if you pair it with something that's not full of acid as a backing, if you need to frame it or something, that would probably be a good idea. But it definitely isn't a concern of mine, just because, again, it's this preciousness I was feeling stymied by when I was trying to work. And I try to remove those. I don't try to think about those things, and it's not really an issue. Like if I was doing a huge public art installation or something, I probably have to really consider it.
I think about it. The papers, I mean, I don't angst over it, but most of the papers that I use, I hand color myself, and I make sure those papers are acid free. So that sort of gives me a little, oh, you don't have to worry about that. The other things, that's part of why I put the barrier coat on them, because for one, I find that people touch my work a lot. And two, I think it helps preserve it. You know, when things hang in people's houses, you don't know if it's going to be in the sunlight, and especially I worry about that with fabric fading. So my only solution to that is to put a barrier coat on and a varnish on, and hope that helps preserve it.
I don't worry about it too much. It's back in my head somewhere, but I can't be like my own like archivist, my own publicist.
Yeah, yeah.
My own writer, my own intern.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
exhausting.
Right.
At some point, others will take care of it. Others
Yeah.
will figure it out, and that's cool. I got things to do.
I
Yeah.
think there's also the flip side is that, does every single artist, does every single thing they make need to last for eternity? If you play that out, it doesn't seem sustainable either. So,
but my concern really for that is not really for me. It's for people who buy my work.
right.
I feel like, it has to last for them. That's the concern for
Right.
me.
Well, if you buy a piece and put it like by the window with sunlight hitting it, like that's on them,
I know, but still, I just try to do everything I can do. I mean, it's out of my hands, really.
Yeah.
But
Well, let's see. Alyssa and Lynn have one more question. And that is if any of you would be willing to talk about how to tame the inner critic.
Ooh, great question, Lynn. Love that. Ladies, want to go first?
no, you can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I think the inner critic, in a way, is your best friend. I definitely have negative thoughts about my own work, how I could do it better, how it could be accomplished or whatever. But it's fun to have him or her hang out in your mind, but then also it's fun to push them outside for a minute and let them back in the next day when you're looking at your work afterwards to say, what could you do? What can change? So I think it's all about knowing when to let them in and when to say, give me a minute. Yeah.
I agree. I also think that it's, we all struggle with it, but I also think it's helps push you forward. It's like, there is no perfect. There's only perfect for me, and I want to do the best I can do. So it pushes me to push myself to get to that place. The other side of it, that comes and goes, and it's just something you have to learn to roll with. But it is a good, it's a force for good as well as a force for evil, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Totally.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. It's I like the inviting in occasionally. I mean, I also try to pay attention to if I'm feeling tense about something, like if I'm looking at artwork and it's both exciting me and of other people's and it's making me tense or my own experience, I'm trying to pay attention to that because like Paula said, it pushes me into a different place. I think I have grown to not really worry as much about comparisons or that negative voice. I mean, there's bad days for sure, but I just try to be pushed into a new direction and follow that kind of that energy. Where is this taking me? Yeah, I try to keep healthy boundaries. I like to look at a lot of people's artwork. I like to look at what's going on. It's exciting to me. So I think that kind of overwhelms the inner critic somehow.
It's also fun to be the critic at exhibitions, right? Art theaters. Look at the work hanging on the wall and think to yourself, how come, for example, Micheline Thomas had a big show at Miami during the fair 2 years ago, had a room with wallpaper that she had done herself. It was a cool space. But at one point, the wallpaper did not line up. I'm like, how does that happen at this level? Who would see this? All I saw was that space in the middle like that. I just couldn't.
But so sometimes that's nice, right? Because it's mistakes are made, right? No one's perfect, right? Yeah.
Okay to make mistakes, and even at that level, at a museum with the world watching.
Well, and that's also like Beth was just saying, it's so great to look at lots of work. It's always good to be constantly looking at a lot of work. And sometimes it's like, oh, that's so great. And sometimes it's like, this is terrible. I'm much better than this. Or, so I, and it's all out there, right? If you spend the day in the city going from gallery to gallery, you can see so much in one day. So it's you guys all have such a healthy balance with the inner critic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the great questions, by the way. And let's see, Michelle says she enjoyed hearing the artists and loved all their work. Very inspiring. Thank you. And can a copy of the program be found? I'll be putting this on the Opalka YouTube so people can come back to it if they want to. We have another comment from Deanna. She's the great director of I know I get your position wrong, but the branch manager of 2 of the branches, including Pine Hills. We work together on all these shows, and she says, thank you to Paula, Beth, and Juan. Having your wonderful work at the library has meant so much to our staff and patrons, and we've gotten so much positive feedback from folks saying how much they love the exhibition. Thank you, Amy, for organizing the fantastic discussion. Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you, everybody, really sincerely. And it really has been, I think, all of the exhibitions have been great. This one has been the one where we've gotten so much feedback, and I think it just was the perfect time. Everyone really needed something beautiful to look at, and just thank you all very, very much.
That's great.
Thank you.
Honor.
I wanted to mention that the show is up until April 17th, so there's still time to see it for anyone who hasn't seen it. And I'm going to put in, there's a link. David Brigman, who's in our audience tonight, wrote on his Get Visual blog a review of the show. So if anyone wants to read that, I put the link in there. So thanks, David. And I also wanted to mention for what's coming up at Opalka this week, we have 2 events. One is Friday night, there's a dance performance of Ellen Sinopoli performing in the space interacting with the exhibition there right now, which is Judith Braun, My Pleasure, a solo exhibition of the artist Judith Braun. That shows up till April 23rd. So please come out and check it out. And the dance performance is, there are some tickets left. They're $24 a piece, I think. And there's information on our website, which I'll share. And then on Saturday, we have an event at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon it's part of the International Slow Art Day. And Judy Gilmore, our director, is going to lead a tour of slow looking at the art and then a discussion. So it's about an hour on Saturday afternoon. So that's what's coming up. But I wanted to thank everybody for being here, and especially our 3 artists for taking the time to talk to us about your work. Is really nice to hear everyone's different takes.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy, for organizing this. And Juan and Paula, it was great to hang out with you guys a little bit.
Yeah, it was nice. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye. Good night.